Hello, friends of Studio B. This is Steve Brule, and this is my coffee time that I normally do live stream, but today's is a pre-recorded session. And it's inspired mostly by a global news report from last week that struck me as bizarrely propagandish. And that's become the norm in the news and the mainstream media, of course. And the topics dealt with are the vaccine travel requirements in Canada, where you need the double vaccine to go on airplanes and planes and a whole pile of other things. I'm going to go over that in some detail. And then there is this focus on safety. Safety is the rationale for virtually every restriction of freedoms today. Then the news report goes straight into climate change. And of course, one of the things I noticed on all of these reports, or the majority of them, is that there's a female face to everything. Basically, almost all female anchors, female reporters, interviewing female in the street and in businesses. So let's get into it here, and I'll start up the clips that I've collected from the Global News, or rather, I think it's Global National television show.
As of today, only fully vaccinated passengers will be allowed to board most planes and some trains in this country. While there is a bit of a grace period, most travelers are welcoming the move. David Aiken has our top story tonight.
Notice how she makes us a point right up front to suggest that Canadians in general are happy about this restriction, that you need double vaccinated to get on an airplane or a train in Canada. Let's have a look a little further.
Hi there, do you guys have your proof of vaccination?
I do, yes.
It's the dawn of a new era of travel in Canada. No boarding a via train, the Rocky Mountaineer, or a plane without showing proof of vaccination.
Just pause it here for a second to make a point that you notice that he said it's the dawn of a new era of travel in Canada.
It's the dawn of a new era of travel in Canada.
Signaling that this is not a temporary measure. This is not just as for the COVID or coronavirus restrictions. And Trudeau, even though Trudeau himself has says as we're coming out of the pandemic, but the news report, and I think he's letting the cat out of the bag here a little bit, suggests that this is the dawn of a new era, that this is not going to end ever. You're going to require some form of vaccine, or I think would be ultimately social credit score card permission to be able to go travel in Canada.
I'm from America, and we actually don't have to prove that we have a vaccine, and I really don't like that very much. I don't feel too safe about it.
Notice that she catches herself and says that I don't feel safe about it. You're going to find this in the next person as well, that the news reporters sought out people who supported this program in Canada, and I think they also coached them to use the word safe, or at least to talk about whether this made them safe or not. Let's go back and let's continue watching here.
I support it. I live in the UK, where there are much higher rates of COVID, so anything we can do to keep each other safe, happy with that.
It will help mitigate all the risks related to COVID.
So you notice that they found 3 people, all of them young, 2 of them women, 1 old couple in the beginning, but they didn't let the old couple elaborate at all. Just that they asked them whether they had their COVID passport with them. They answered yes. They didn't ask them any further questions, or maybe they did, but they edited that out because the news slant is trying to make the Canadian public believe that there's widespread happiness and support for this. They did not voice one single critical comment from anyone in any part of society about the vaccine requirements for travel. Let's continue looking here.
The rules are pretty straight ahead. They apply to any passenger aged 12 years and 4 months or older. And they apply to all employees in the federally regulated air, rail, and marine transportation sectors. That includes those working in airports, train stations, and on maintenance crews.
We know today that vaccination is one of the most effective ways to reduce the further spread of COVID-19.
They don't comment further or question that. That claim has been debunked for the most part. We know that the vaccinated people can spread the COVID virus every bit as much as unvaccinated people. And we know that, that many vaccinated people are suffering from coronavirus and being hospitalized and dying from coronavirus. So the news report, they call themselves a news, but it is really one of Canada's many government propaganda stations. Let's have a look at, I quickly looked in Twitter at some public commentary on whether people like this policy or not. And it quickly came up with quite a few people who are not happy about this. Callie Lilly says, Canadians, please sign and share my official House of Commons petition saying no to vaccine passport for travel in Canada, whether by air, land or sea. There's an actual petition before the House of Parliament on this very topic, not mentioned in Global National's report. Very easy to find, and it is very easy to find people who are not happy and extremely critical with this program of Justin Trudeau's and the Canadian government. Here's the petition. E3622, Civil and Human Rights. It's before the Parliament right now, and it has 37,800 signatures. If you've ever put a petition before the House of Commons in Canada, you know it's not easy. And to get 38,000, almost 38,000 at this time of signatures on that is quite significant. And it should have been in a balanced report on this issue of vaccine passports for travel in Canada. But of course it's not, because this is not a news station, it is a propaganda station. They receive funding from the Trudeau government to put forth Trudeau's plans and support them. And they do to a T. Here again, another Twitter response. We, the citizens of Canada, call upon the Government of Canada to not mandate vaccine passports for international travel. Another one, Annabelle V. Trudeau's passport for travel by air, sea or train will be required by Canadian citizens starting October 30th. England is scrapping its planned vaccine passport. Canada needs to do the same. This is not for your health. That's exactly right, Annabelle. And another one, Untapped Growth asks here, what is your line in the sand? And this person below immediately says, mine was vaccine passports for travel. We left Canada. There are a lot of people leaving Canada over Trudeau's response to this so-called pandemic. And these kinds of highly totalitarian restrictions are a big part of the reason. Here, Concerned Canadian says, wake up, Canadians. Is China's social credit score coming next to Canada? Are confirmed vaccine passport restrictions denying the unvaccinated access to many services, public access and travel? Is this the precursor? I ask Liberal supporters, is this really what you voted for? A lot of people in Canada, unfortunately, are happy about this, unfortunately. Here's where I have a look at the actual Ministry of Health in Ontario, their vaccination guidance for businesses and organizations under what they call the Reopening Ontario Act. This was published on October 15th, 2021. This is to give you an example of the totalitarianism and the absolute nonsensical rules being put in place. These rules are, of course, they don't make sense as respect to controlling the virus. They only make sense in respect of controlling the people of Canada. It's totalitarianism. And you'll see, I'm going to show you some examples right now as to why they're totally arbitrary. Here, Appendix A of that document. Requirements for patrons in indoor sport and recreational fitness facilities. The indoor premises of a facility used for sports and recreational fitness activities. Here it says, listed for youth under the age of 18 actively participating in sports, proof of vaccination is not required for sports leagues. And look here, martial arts and dance classes, amongst a few other things. But if you are a youth under the age of 18 and you want to use a gym or other exercise equipment areas, it is required. So you can go to dance class and martial arts where you're going to be banging up against each other face to face, but you can't go to a gym where you're going to be by yourself lifting weights. How is this logical? The only logic to this I can think of is that the people who wrote this up have kids in martial arts and dance classes. So they didn't want to have their kids restricted. But they don't have kids who go to the gym lifting weights. So it's okay to leave those restrictions for those kids. Let's have a look a little further here. Here's another one that highlights the absolute arbitrariness and insanity and the punishment angle, really the motive of punishment in this document. Here you can, for wedding services and rites and ceremonies, in other words, you can go to the wedding. You don't need a vaccine to go and attend somebody's wedding. But if you want to go to their reception, read below here, you do need a vaccine. So you can't go to the party. You can go to the wedding where you're going to bump around with the same people, but you can't go and enjoy the social event afterwards with those same people. Completely arbitrary, entirely about punishing people and coercing them into getting the vaccine. And here's an interesting part. Unless a patron qualifies for an exemption, so no proof of vaccination or proof of being entitled to an exemption is not required for workers or volunteers, including coaches and officials. So even in those areas where you must have a vaccine to go and use the gym, okay, coaches in the gym, officials in the gym, workers and volunteers in the same gym do not require proof of vaccination. This is purely and entirely about coercion. None of these requirements, none of this imposed control will stop the virus at all, not even prevent one single case. The people going in to use the gym, vaccinated because they have to be, are going to be rubbing shoulders with workers and volunteers, coaches and officials who do not have to be vaccinated. What other reason than punishment and control could this be? Let's move on. Here's some examples of exemptions. Unless otherwise specified by a local medical officer or health or a specific organization, the proof of identification and proof of vaccination against COVID-19 requirements under provisional, blah, 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 this number here, do not apply to workers, contractors, repair workers, delivery workers, students. All students do not apply. The restrictions do not apply. I mean, it's incredible. Volunteers, inspectors, and others who are entering the business or organization for work purposes and not as patrons. So only people who are paying to go and use these facilities must show proof of vaccination. The employees don't. Everybody else supporting the organization don't require proof of vaccination. How that is supposed to be stopping a virus from spreading? Only in Trudeau's fantasy mind and Doug Ford's fantasy mind does this have any effect on the spread of COVID-19. Now, here's another one here. A patron who is entering an indoor area solely for the purposes of to use a washroom. So you can go in to use a washroom without the vaccine. And, I think that they counted on the fact that almost no citizens, and certainly the media, were not going to report on this, and none of the citizens are going to read this document. But if you read it, it gets bizarre and bizarre and bizarre, and leads you to the unavoidable conclusion that this policy is entirely about social control, not the control of the spread of the virus. Here is another set. It's more of these exemptions. So I particularly liked number 2 on this list here. If you are entering a business to make a retail purchase, you do not have to show your proof of vaccination. Now, I was actually kind of shocked to see this because the way this was presented is that you wouldn't be able to go in and buy your groceries. That's what I thought. But here it is here. And I have a question for the people who wrote this. Who goes into a retail store except to make a retail purchase? That's the entire reason to go into a retail store. And of course, once you're in the store, after telling them you're going in to make a retail purchase, they're not going to follow you around the store to make sure you go and get one purchase and go directly to the cash. But that's beside the point anyways. The point is that it's so filled with exemptions that the only purpose of this document is to coerce unaware citizens into getting a vaccine they don't want because they believe that their restrictions are throughout society, that they won't be able to get their groceries, that they won't be able to go to their swim class and their dance class and all the other things that in fact they can go because they're filled with exemptions. They're only punishing young men who want to go to the gym and lift weights. That's just about the only people who are prohibited from going into the gyms without a proof of vaccine. But there are others. But the point of this whole discussion here is that these are arbitrary rules meant to scare and coerce the public into rushing out and getting vaccines. I encourage everybody to ask themselves, why are they being so coerced into taking a vaccine that they probably don't need or may not need? That should be an individual choice. But the officials of our culture right around the world are pushing this in an incredible degree as has never been seen before in the history of humanity. Let's read this little nugget here. The guidance provided in this document is subject to updates due to evolution of the pandemic, the evolution of technology, public health advice and direction, and ongoing engagement with Indigenous communities and organizations. That is rather bizarre. What they're suggesting here is that they're subject to updates for whatever reason you can possibly imagine. But they managed to throw in, the only reason I can think of this is political correctness in Canada of some kind, that ongoing engagement with Indigenous communities and organizations. I would have thought that they'd be engaged with lots of different communities and organizations, not just Indigenous. In fact, who are they having ongoing engagement with? I don't know. But it's a bizarre thing to add in. The whole document is bizarre. And again, I have to emphasize, this is not about public health. This is about public control, coercion. Okay, let's get back to the global national news program.
I think what's really important is that this will help us rebuild consumer confidence, traveler confidence, and get people traveling again. And so if this is what it takes, then, let's do it.
Notice that, again, it's a female voice telling us that somehow this is going to build consumer confidence in travel. No, it's not. People are getting vaccine because they're forbidden from traveling. It's not building confidence. It's coercion. People wanted to travel without the vaccine, but they were prohibited from traveling. But this is the propaganda that Global National here is pushing on behalf of the Trudeau government, who are operating on behalf of the global elite. Let's continue on.
Plane travelers will be asked to show proof of vaccine as they arrive at security screening areas. Train travelers will be asked to show their proof on the platform just before boarding.
Notice that this looks exactly like the totalitarian requirements in any totalitarian country. You are asked to prove your right to travel. And remember at the beginning, they referred to this as the dawn of a new era of travel in Canada. This is not about the coronavirus. The coronavirus is an excuse to implement this system in Canada.
It's the dawn of a new era of travel in Canada.
It is the new dawn of a totalitarian Canada. And this is happening simultaneously in countries all over the world. Let's continue on.
Travelers are also encouraged to use the new standardized Canada-wide proof of vaccination. That proof is being issued or will be issued by provincial health authorities. It comes in a paper form, but many provinces will let you download the QR code, a vaccine certificate, right on your smartphone for easy reference at check-in.
QR code on your smartphone. This is what's going on in China. This is what's going on in totalitarian countries around the world. And the elite of the world want this to go on in every country of the world. This is about totalitarian control of every citizen in the world.
It's the dawn of a new era of travel in Canada.